Hola, hola, what's going on, mi gentes? This is Protestant episode 7, Movies That Raised Me. And if you know me, you know I'm a movie critic. You know sometimes I talk during movies, and I'm sorry about that. So let's get right straight into it. All right. You know what's funny? When people ask me about my favorite movies, especially my favorite movies of all time, I kind of like freeze up because I know there are some great movies out there, and I know that movies are technically sometimes better than the others, but the movies I picked, they have really good acting. They have really good producing, really good writing, and but this is not what it's all about. This episode is about the greatest movies that impacted me, something that stayed with me. Now, I watched movies. I'm going to show my age right now. I watched movies over VHS, movies that I can quote by heart, movies that somehow became who I am today. Now, I grew up in an era where you loved the movie, you watched it 50 times, and you had to rewind it all the way back until you got to it. And trust me, my mom would be pissed if she found out that she couldn't watch the movie. She had to rewind it. She always told you to rewind the movie after you're done with it and then put it back. But we didn't have Netflix. We didn't have Disney Plus. Whatever tape was in the house is whatever you were gonna watch. And we didn't really have DVDs at the time. That was a little bit later. But if you loved it, you watched it over and over and over again. So looking back, some of these movies weren't just entertaining to me. They taught me a lot of things. They taught me about friendships, sacrifice, loyalty, imagination, and perseverance, even before I even realized it. Now, these are necessarily not the best movies ever made, but these are the movies that raised me. Now, coming in at number 5, the Rocky series. Yes, is my number 5, and some people's top 3 or 2 or 1. And honestly, like thinking about it right now, boxing is like I love boxing. I love exercising and stuff like that. I like doing those things. And it's because of Rocky. But I realized that the movie isn't about the Rocky. Even if I was just kind of looking for the action, the training montages, the fights. I love seeing Rocky getting hit, 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 still coming, still coming, still coming. Wah, 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 wah. And thinking he was gonna get knocked out, but he doesn't. And somehow I watch these movies and I find myself paying attention to completely different things now that I'm older. Like I pay attention about how Rocky gets down, but he never gets out. I pay attention to how Rocky uh other people are doubted him, but he continues to do what he has to do. I mean, he does lose, in some of these fights. And there are moments where he does question himself. So I do sometimes connect with that. But I feel like, you know, life isn't all about failure. It's all about continuing and continuing on and on. Now, my favorite scene in the Rocky series is, one of my favorite scenes, it's two of my favorite scenes, is when he's talking to Creed and he's like, tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. And he was like, there is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. That was like, that really like held inside of me. Because that made it seem like, yo, like you're going to get better and better every day, but you cannot give up. You have to continue getting better. You got to keep push forward. You rest when you're dead. You know what I'm saying? And that was always my montage whenever I'm trying to get better at, fitness, when I'm trying to get better as a father. Every day is a chance to move forward. By the way, you like my shirt? Trying to get this basketball theme going, even though we're not talking about basketball. Sorry, I just had to point out the shirt because I know it's there, and it shouldn't be the focal point of the podcast. But anyway, my next favorite scene was when he talked about facing Drogo, I believe. Um, I forgot his name. Rocky Five, when he fights the Russian, and he was like, "I'm scared," and he was talking about him being afraid to fight because that Creed died, and he started to like really get himself in a position where, you know, he didn't know if he could do this. No, but then his wife picks him up. They have this talk. They really talk about like what they needed to do to really build him up, and he got his trainer. And then he kept pushing through until he won that fight. I really like that scene because it really showed his vulnerability. And a person who fights all the time is actually afraid of fighting, you know? And man, he's taking steroids, man. They're different rules for different times. That's the 80s for you. But these scenes always stuck with me. because it reminds me that the success isn't always about talent, it's about consistency. And success is showing up one more day when you don't even feel like it. All right, that was my number five. Let's get to it. Number four, the movie Hook with Robin Williams. And I swear, this movie hits completely different when you're a father. When you're an adult, it's like, wow. But then as a kid, I love Neverland. I love the pirates. I love the sword fights. I love Rufio, kinda. Like, but even the food scene, oh my God, I'm so hungry for the food scene. But now, I kind of remember how he's a man now. He got busy. He's an adult. He forgot how to be like present in the moment. And he forgot how to play with his kids. He forgot how to be imaginative with his children. And honestly, that happened to a lot of us. That happened to me. We get jobs, we pay bills, we worry about responsibilities, we stress ourselves out. We spend so much time trying to be adults that we forget that we were children at first. And then my son came along, little Peanut. And now I find myself watching him, discover things for the first time, watching him laugh, and, at things that don't make any sense at all. I give him like a little look and he just cracks up. And watching him explore the world, especially when we went to the park today, that was a beautiful thing. Watching him like explore, even being interpersonal with other people. Um, and looking back at that movie, Hook makes a lot more sense now. Now, my favorite part of the movie was kind of how it wasn't really my favorite part, but it was a um more deeper part because he was so busy on his cell phone, so busy on his cell phone. Everything was going on like around him that he just told the kids to shut up. Like he really told the kids like be quiet. He was really upset with them and they really like and I think his wife threw his phone out the window. You know what I'm saying? And that became a whole big thing. I forgot really the part, babe, but he got so frustrated. And I think about that, how I get so frustrated sometimes. I can't lose my cool and I have to be like The Rock. And then sometimes I need to stop and play with my kids, stop and just enjoy the moment, that these moments can stop and wait. You know what I'm saying? I can always do these things later. This is so important to your overall life that you need to just be present with your kids. I think that's what the movie's trying to tell us. And it reminds us that growing up, like growing older doesn't mean you have to stop being playful. You know what I'm saying? And I tell that to all my friends too. I try to invite them to hang out. I know they're going through things and I'm not saying that like, hey, you should come hang out with me when you're having issues. But what I'm trying to say is like we all get older and we all split and we all separate to our own things, but don't forget what brought us together, which was fun, friendship, memories and stuff. And never, assume that everyone's just gonna be there. You know what I'm saying? And then just remember that, like, having family, having togetherness is so much is so important. And I love that. And I hope you guys can take that away from that too if you watch Hook, watching a different lens as an adult, you know? And now we go to our number three. And number three, woof, this was a tough one right here because I didn't think I would ever put this in my number three, top three, but I did. Now, I don't know if there's ever been a movie that made me like use my imagination so much, excuse me, more than Back to the Future. The idea that one decision completely changed your future, like just fascinated me as a kid. Like, what if you can go back in time? What if you can change one thing? What if your entire life turned out differently because of one choice? Oof, I'm gonna have to sit back, sit on that one real quick. Wow. And I know what I know what part. And honestly, like as I've gotten older, that message seems more powerful to me because life be really like that. Life be lifing. Like one decision can change everything. One relationship you were in or not in changes everything. One opportunity that you chose to choose that job or go on that trip changes everything. And like I just like you just see and you think about it. Like that did whatever you were thinking about then. Like think about that. Like, God, if I would have just not went to Spain, if I would have just chose DeVry University instead of Rome University, if I would have just not went to that movie theaters when I got into that car accident and everything changed. You know what I'm saying? Um, like those things, it could have ended up differently, you know? Not the okay, so my favorite part of my movie about Back to the Future was like the interconnection is always a beautiful thing. But the one thing that I really loved was when he went to go he started like playing a song. Um I forgot what song he was playing, but he started playing the song and he did everything he had to do, even if it was the wrong way. He did everything he had to do for his parents. And when they finally kissed, he came right back. Bing, 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 I forgot the words. Okay, don't quote me on that one. But he something happened. I think Biff tried to take obviously try to be with her, and like he finally like knocked out his bully, and then he got back to where he needed to be at in order to kiss his kiss his future wife, and then he looked at the pictures and everything got together. I was like, it was such a relief the first time seeing it, knowing that that was already going to happen. You can still feel it, you know what I'm saying? And so like everything else was interconnected between one, two, and three. That's why I absolutely love it. The writing is amazing. Now, and by the way, I'm doing this on the fly too, because anyway. But what I love most about that trilogy is that it never stops asking the question, what kind of future are you creating for yourself? And that's something that I feel like is very important because, like, you always think about if I can go back, if I can go back, if I can go back. But think about this. What if you were 90 years old, you were 100 years old, and your future self sent you right now to the time you are right now? I'm 42 years old. So what if my future self sent me in the past right now to in this moment? And now I'm living in this moment the best way I can, sharing this moment with you in my top five movies. Now we're on number two. Let's go. My number two, by far, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The original movies, not the newer ones. The originals. Yes. One and two. Secret of the Ooze. Yes. All right. I love these two movies. I love them. I love the costumes. I love the pizza. I love, whatever it is that we're talking about with Cowabunga, dude. I didn't even know that thing existed. Now I know that's a California thing. Anyway, but what really stayed with me was the brotherhood, the connection. Four completely different personalities, always arguing, always getting in each other's faces or their nerves. Like this type of movie, like it really had layers and layers of, you know, like interconnections where everyone like connected with each other in some type of way. But when things got difficult, they came together. And that was something that I really loved about it. And someone who was actually underrated is Splinter, actually. Because when I was younger, Splinter was just like wise old rat, you know what I'm saying? He didn't really do much of anything. I think part one at the end of part one and then obviously a little bit of part two, they kind of showed you like his potential even as such an old rat, you know what I'm saying? But now that I see Splinter as an adult, I see him as a teacher, a father, and I see him differently. Like, I see him as a mentor, like a guide. Someone who's teaching values into the turtles instead of just giving them instructions. You know what I'm saying? So my favorite scene was obviously the fighting parts. Obviously the fighting parts. I was always, but like the relationships between Leonardo and Raphael really was so complicated. Raphael was so aggressive. He was so he was such a loner, and he didn't he didn't want to, you couldn't tell him nothing. He didn't tell him a goddamn thing. He said, mind your goddamn business, everybody, you know? But when it came down to it and he was by himself, Leonardo really did care. Leonardo really cared for him. Leonardo did not even leave his side. Leonardo did not abandon him even when he should have, or he could have. He was like, no, like this is my brother. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I truly loved about that. That was something that I definitely like remembered that moment when they went out to the farm, when they had their first true defeat. And that's what made these movies special to me. Like it was the action when I was younger. But then when I got older, looking at the relationships that they had, looking at like finally like, how they came together in order to become one instead of like becoming this like separate group, that ultimately would fail. So now, drumroll please. Number one is Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Woo! Number one movie. And honestly, I think this is one of the greatest movies ever made. The action is incredible. The practical effects, incredible. Soundtrack, what am I going to say? Incredible. And underneath all of that is something so much deeper. Like this story, yeah, I didn't realize that as a young person, because I was just looking at the action, the car scenes, the chase, everything. But this story is about sacrifice, protection, responsibility. It's about a story coming up something greater than what it was designed to be. Now, as I got older, like I kind of had to appreciate the relationship between Terminator and John Carter because I never had that relationship between a father figure and myself. So seeing Terminator and John Carter the way it was, a machine to the future of the rebellion, I think it was, or the revolution. But somehow these machines, or this machine particularly, becomes a father figure. And then sometimes this machine, 'cause remember, John Connor was adopted. Just to put that out there, a little bit of information. And somehow this machine, Arnold Schwarzenegger, becomes more human than a lot of people. So my favorite scene is obviously the scene that like always gets me is when he talks about him having to sacrifice himself at the end of the movie. I mean, you always have other scenes, the fight scenes, the scenes where he kind of talked to his adopted parents about if Wolfie is alive. I mean, if Wolfie's there, how's Wolfie? But the dog's not really named Wolfie. You know what I mean? He has another name, and they're like, no, he's dead. They're dead because he changed his voice and that manipulation factor. You know what I'm saying? Another scene was when, they tried to go into Skynet, and the guy sacrificed himself because they had to get the chip or something like that. They really wanted to make sure that they got the chip for Skynet in order to I forgot what it was. They had to destroy the chip at Skynet, so they got the guy in order to go over there and get it. You know what I'm saying? That was, you know what I'm saying? So that was one of my favorite parts too, because Terminator came out and he started demolishing everything. But my main part was the ending. Ending always gets me. That always gets me. Like even now, the ending still gets me. Like the way he lowered himself down um into the lava or into the whatever that was. And like he was a robot, so who cared? You know what I mean? But it was about his sacrifice, and that John Connor actually loved him, even though, he had to sacrifice himself. He knew he was the last chip. But he had to sacrifice himself. And John Connor started to have love for him and be like, no, you don't have to go. You don't have to do this. But that was what the future intended. And it's all about doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything. And maybe that's why these movies stayed with me all these years. Not because they were perfect, not because they were popular, but it's because they taught me something, taught me a lot. And maybe those movies that are in your top five probably taught you too, you know? But for me, like Rocky, my number five, that taught me perseverance. Hook, that taught me not to lose my imagination. Back to the Future, that taught me possibility. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles taught me brotherhood. And Terminator 2 taught me sacrifice. So that is our show for today. And maybe this is why we keep returning back to these certain movies. Um, but that is our show. And I want you to continue that. Look at the movies that you've watched before, because once in a while, there's movies that's just gonna really, we need to remember what they taught us. So that is our show. Thank you so much for joining me. Capicu. I'm out.